betrayals. Yuri Boyka, who once proudly called himself the most complete fighter in the world, now limps silently through the prison, relegated to the job of a lowly janitor. With his parole officially denied for another 15 years, Boyka is a forgotten legend with a shattered knee. Trapped entirely in his own defeat, Gaga visits the broken man, offering him an easier life working in the prison library. Boyka coldly rejects the charity. He simply wants to fight, demanding entry into the new prison spets competition. Gaga openly mocks the idea, reminding Boyka that fighting Saikov would be complete suicide. But Boyka's eyes burn with fierce determination. Later, during Saikov's warm-up match, Boyka steps from the shadows, clean-shaven and radiating intense rage. Interrupting the bout, he aggressively demands to fight the champion. The guards allow the impromptu match. To everyone's absolute shock, Boyka moves with lethal precision. Despite his bad knee, he unleashes a flawless barrage of spinning kicks and devastating punches, completely annihilating Saikov in seconds. With a terrifying roar, Boyka reclaims his title as the undisputed Russian representative. Boyka is immediately transported to the notorious Gorgon prison, an intimidating fortress hidden in the isolated mountains of Georgia. Upon arrival, he is escorted into a lavish underground casino where wealthy mob bosses and corrupt officials, including the tournament's organizer, Rizzo, scheme to make a fortune. The 8 elite fighters from prisons worldwide are lined up for inspection. Among them are Rodrigo Silva from Brazil, the deadly cartel enforcer Raul Dolor Quiñones from Colombia, and a loudmouthed American named Jericho Jones, who insists everyone call him Turbo. Suddenly, the towering Warden Cuss marches into the lineup, radiating absolute malice. He aggressively asserts his dominance, warning the killers that in Gorgon they are all equally worthless. When Turbo mocks him with a sarcastic smirk, Cuss immediately threatens to make his life a living nightmare, proving that Gorgon is a brutal death camp. The next morning, the fighters are slammed with an exhausting reality check. Instead of being given gyms, they are heavily chained together and dragged into a dusty quarry, forced to perform grueling hard labor by breaking massive rocks. Meanwhile, up on a shaded balcony, Dolor lounges in clean clothes, casually sipping a cold drink and reading a book while watching the others suffer. The blatant favoritism immediately sparks severe tension. Turbo is infuriated, screaming loudly about the gross injustice, while Boyka silently and intensely swings his heavy hammer. When Turbo's loud complaints deeply irritate the hyper-focused Russian, Boyka snaps, and the two instantly butt heads. Their rapidly escalating aggression is stopped only when the heavily armed guards forcefully intervene. The fighters are told they only get 1 single hour of actual training per day, an incredibly harsh restriction designed to deliberately exhaust them before they ever step into the ring. That night, the highly anticipated tournament begins under the dazzling lights of the arena. The crowd goes feral as the Brazilian fighter, Silva, showcases lightning-fast technique, swiftly defeating his tough Greek opponent. Next, Turbo confidently steps into the cage against a vicious Croatian fighter, using a brutal blend of street brawling and explosive knockout power. The American batters his opponent into unconsciousness, loudly boasting to the cheering crowd. Then, it is finally Boyka's turn. He faces off against a fast French champion named Dupont, a lethal striker known for his unmatched agility. The French fighter zeroes in on Boyka's braced knee, landing agonizing blows that make Boyka wince in immense pain. But Boyka channels his pain into pure fury, launching a spectacular spinning aerial assault that knocks Dupont completely out. Finally, the pampered Dolor steps up, decisively destroying his opponent with effortless cruelty. Following the explosive first round, the defeated fighters are quietly rounded up and led out of the prison under the chilling cover of darkness. They are deceptively told they are finally going home. Instead, they are marched deep into a secluded execution spot hidden within the woods. Without a single shred of mercy, the guards coldly gun down the injured men, tossing their bleeding bodies into makeshift ovens. Back inside the concrete walls, the surviving fighters are completely unaware of the bloody fate of their peers. However, tension in the sweltering quarry reaches an absolute boiling point the following day. Turbo continually antagonizes Boyka, relentlessly poking at his pride, until the extreme tension explodes into a sudden, vicious bare-knuckle fistfight. The ruthless guards swiftly beat Boyka and Turbo down, dragging them away and throwing them into solitary confinement. Locked inside suffocating, pitch-black boxes, Turbo desperately tries to spark a conversation to keep his sanity intact, but the stoic Boyka angrily demands silence. Meanwhile, in the luxurious VIP lounge, mobsters Gaga and Farnati are completely furious. They confront Rizzo, demanding to know exactly why their expensive fighters are breaking rocks. Rizzo smiles wickedly, proudly revealing the sinister truth behind the competition. The entire tournament is a heavily rigged scam. He strongly advises the mobsters to liquidate all their assets and bet absolutely everything on Dolor. Rizzo guarantees the Colombian will win, casually dismissing the other fighters as weak horses that will eventually be put down. Greedy for an unprecedented, massive payday, the corrupt managers eagerly agree. Thanks to their manager's sudden influence, Boyka and Turbo are finally released from the suffocating darkness. Back in the blistering quarry, Turbo voices his bitter realization. The organizers are deliberately starving them, working them to the bone to completely break their spirits so Dolor can secure an effortless victory. But Boyka fiercely refuses to be broken. He glares at the massive stones and loudly declares they will use the grueling labor to their absolute advantage. Remembering Turbo's earlier strategy to improvise and adapt to overcome their obstacles, Boyka begins using the boulders and heavy chains for intense strength conditioning. Seeing the Russians' unbreakable will, Turbo enthusiastically joins in. The two bitter rivals form an incredibly powerful alliance, transforming the agonizing work into a brutal, focused training montage. Turbo even creates a soothing, improvised heating pad to properly ease the terrible swelling in Boyka's severely damaged knee. During a quiet, exhausted moment of sharing smuggled water, the two hardened warriors finally drop their walls. Turbo emotionally admits that he is fighting solely for his children. He just wants to survive and see his little girl again. When Turbo asks Boyka what truly drives him to such extremes, the Russian speaks with overwhelming passion. He states that God gave him only one incredible gift, being the most complete fighter in the entire world. He has trained his entire life to prove he is deeply worthy of this divine gift, and winning this ultimate tournament is his single purpose. Turbo listens in silent awe, finally understanding the sheer, terrifying depth of Boyka's fierce spirit. The intense hostility vanishes completely, immediately replaced by a profound brotherhood built heavily on mutual respect. The brutal semifinals finally arrive. Boyka confidently steps into the ring against the lethal Brazilian Silva. The match is an absolute chaotic war, with both men trading devastating, bone-crunching strikes. Despite Silva's incredible agility and flying kicks, Boyka's ferocious determination and newly forged quarry strength easily overpower the skilled martial artist. Boyka powerfully delivers a crushing finishing blow, decisively winning the bloody match. Instead of arrogantly gloating, Boyka helps Silva to his feet, showing deep, honorable respect for his fallen opponent. However, that profound respect means absolutely nothing to the corrupt prison officials. Shortly after the fight, Silva is marched straight into the dark woods and mercilessly executed. Back inside, Warden Cuss realizes that Boyka and Turbo pose a massive, terrifying threat to their scam. He coldly orders his vicious guards to secretly pull Turbo out of his cell and beat him. The next morning, Boyka discovers Turbo in the quarry, horribly battered, severely bruised, and barely able to stand. Boyka instantly realizes that the organizers are deliberately trying to ensure a flawless victory for Dolor by removing any real competition. Boyka grimly reveals a horrifying truth he recently learned from another inmate. The losing fighters do not ever go home. They simply disappear entirely. Knowing his new brother will brutally die if he stays, Boyka engineers a highly daring distraction. He purposely provokes a violent, chaotic fight with the heavily armed prison guards. In the ensuing chaos, Boyka violently shatters the heavy iron chain linking Turbo to the work line. Screaming for him to furiously run, Boyka holds off the swarming guards with ferocious strikes. Inspired by Boyka's incredible sacrifice, the other oppressed prisoners fiercely tackle the guards, fully allowing Turbo to sprint into the dark forest, vanishing into the trees, just as Boyka is finally beaten into complete submission. Dragged violently back into the prison, Boyka fully expects to be executed on the spot. Instead, he is thrown onto the hard floor in front of Rizzo and the wealthy mobsters. Rizzo is furious about the Americans' daring escape, but Gaga steps forward with a sickening, arrogant smirk. The mob boss casually reveals that he intentionally and maliciously betrayed Boyka. Gaga shamelessly confesses he placed his immense wealth entirely on the Colombian, completely abandoning the loyal fighter who previously made him rich. Because Turbo escaped, Boyka must now fight Dolor in the grand finale. Boyka's eyes burn with absolute, terrifying hatred as he realizes he has been fully manipulated and discarded like trash. Gaga openly mocks his boiling rage, sealing the ultimate betrayal. Boyka is escorted directly to the roaring arena, completely alone, highly fueled by an agonizing mix of severe physical pain and blinding, righteous fury. The championship final begins, and the arena totally erupts as Boyka faces the lethal Colombian killer, Dolor. From the opening bell, Dolor is frighteningly fast and deeply sadistic. He viciously exploits Boyka's severely damaged knee, landing incredibly precise kicks that repeatedly drop the Russian to the blood-stained mat in pure, blinding agony. The greedy mobsters cheer wildly as Dolor mercilessly batters Boyka, eventually launching a devastating spin kick that literally blasts Boyka completely out of the steel ring. Gasping desperately for air on the hard concrete, Boyka's vision dangerously blurs as the referee slowly begins the agonizing final 10 count. Then he remembers Turbo's wise strategy: adapt and overcome the obstacle. Grabbing a thick, blood-soaked mop pad from a nearby bucket, Boyka furiously wraps it incredibly tight around his shattered knee, creating a makeshift, adrenaline-fueled brace. He rapidly crawls back into the ring just before the final second, shocking the entire screaming arena. Boyka radically switches his fighting stance, completely abandoning his injured leg to employ a wildly unpredictable, upper-body-focused fighting style. Dolor, deeply confused and immensely frustrated by this bizarre tactic, aggressively charges in, attempting a brutal, full-force leg check to end the fight. But Boyka brilliantly anticipates the predictable move. With a horrifying, echoing crack, Boyka gracefully counters with terrifying perfection, violently breaking the Colombian's tibia entirely in half. Dolor instantly collapses to the mat, screaming in pure, helpless agony. The massive arena explodes into stunned silence, then erupts into deafening, chaotic cheers as Boyka stands tall, roaring loudly in victorious defiance. High above, the totally corrupt managers are utterly devastated, having just lost millions of dollars. Barehanded, driven completely insane by the sudden massive financial loss, violently bursts into the warden's office and murders Rizzo and his bodyguard in cold blood. Barehanded is then immediately shot to death by Cuss. Down in the bloody ring, Boyka has definitively won the tournament, completely and utterly ruining the syndicate's flawless plan. Despite his awe-inspiring victory, Boyka is quickly escorted to a dark hallway by a furiously angry warden Cuss and his armed guards. The warden cruelly informs Boyka that because he actively aided in an American prisoner's successful escape, the grand prize of freedom is completely forfeited. Boyka is forcefully shoved onto a transport bus, driven deep into the exact same secluded forest execution spot where the other fighters were brutally murdered. As he steps out into the freezing night air, the guards mercilessly raise their rifles, fully prepared to execute the champion. Suddenly, the dark shadows violently erupt with rapid gunfire. The prison guards are instantly gunned down, and Warden Cuss is shot completely dead. From the dark trees, Turbo emerges holding a smoking assault rifle, grinning wildly at his totally shocked Russian brother. He never actually ran away. He bravely stayed behind to safely save Boyka's life. Moments later, the two, incredibly relieved, free men walk to a nearby dirt road where a sleek luxury car is waiting. Out steps Gaga, happily holding a massive suitcase full of cash. The mobster reveals a shocking final twist. He always knew Boyka fought best when fully fueled by pure rage, so he secretly placed his entire massive fortune on Boyka to win all along. Gaga happily hands Boyka his rightful, incredibly massive share of the tournament winnings. Free, incredibly rich, and finally alive, Boyka shares a deeply emotional goodbye with Turbo. Turbo warmly introduces himself by his real name, Jericho, and Boyka proudly replies with his own Yuri. The two phenomenal, unbreakable warriors part ways on excellent terms, strongly promising that one day they will officially finish their fight in a fair ring. With his honor fully restored, Boyka quickly sprints down the dark road, throwing his head back and laughing joyfully into the cool night. If you totally loved this bone-crushing, action-packed movie recap, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and definitely stick around for more epic breakdowns coming soon.